My name is Clara Harrison, and at 32, I thought I finally understood what family meant. I was wrong. I stood in the small, sunlit garden I had rented for my wedding, the white chairs empty, my phone still warm in my hand. My parents, Marcus and Eleanor Harrison, had just called from their penthouse overlooking Chicago, 45 minutes before the ceremony was to begin. They were not coming. My mother's voice, usually so smooth, was brittle with anger. "Clara, we will not be publicly humiliated," she had said, her words clipping. "Enjoy marrying your mechanic." Then my father, Marcus, had taken the phone, his voice cold and final. "To make our position clear, your access to the family trust fund is frozen. Effective. Immediately." Their motive was simple: preserving the flawless, powerful image of the Harrison media empire. What they didn't know, what they had never, in 6 months, bothered to ask, was that the mechanic they despised, Leo Wilson, had just finalized a patent for an automotive technology that was about to make him one of the most powerful and sought-after men in the city. Their cruel rejection, meant to break me and bring me to heel, was the one mistake that would cost them everything. Growing up as a Harrison taught me one thing: appearances were the only truth. Our family mansion on the Gold Coast was less a home and more a museum, a monument to our status. It was full of cold marble, priceless art, and a heavy, oppressive silence. Inside its perfectly decorated walls, I was always a disappointment. I was the serious one, the quiet one, the one with her nose always stuck in a book. My younger sister, Amelia, was everything I was not. She was charming, beautiful, and effortlessly social. She floated through rooms, her laughter echoing, while I stood in the corners. She understood the unspoken rules of our world, while I just understood books and balance sheets. The difference in how we were valued was made clear at every turn, in 1,000 small cuts. I remember my 16th birthday clearly. I had presented my father with a perfect report card. He was in his study, a cavernous room of mahogany and the smell of old cigars. He glanced at my grades and handed me a crisp $100 check, inside a plain, cream-colored card. "Good job on your grades, Clara," he said, his eyes already returning to the stock ticker glowing on his desk. I had been so proud of those grades, but the check felt cold, like a transaction. 3 months later, for Amelia's 16th birthday, the mansion was transformed. The driveway was filled with the cars of Chicago's elite. My parents, beaming, led Amelia outside to the circular drive. A new, gleaming white Mercedes convertible sat there. A ridiculous, giant red bow on the hood. Amelia's squeals of delight echoed down the street. It was a performance, and she played her part perfectly. I remember my face must have shown something, a flicker of the hurt I felt, because my mother, Eleanor, pulled me aside later. She smoothed my hair, her touch, light and cool, her diamond rings cold against my scalp. "Clara, darling, you must understand," she explained, her voice the epitome of gentle reasonableness. "Amelia is just more social. She has so many friends. She needs a car like that, for her image. Well, you just go to the library. Anyway," she smiled, as if this explained everything. And it did. Amelia was an asset to be polished. I was a utility to be maintained. She was right. I did go to the library. I found my comfort in the quiet, dusty aisles, not in the shallow, glittering parties my parents hosted every week. Parties where I was expected to smile and make small talk with people I had nothing in common with. I buried myself in academics. I graduated valedictorian of my high school and, to my parents' quiet confusion, earned a full academic scholarship to the University of Chicago. They had assumed I would go to an East Coast Ivy League, one they could brag about. My parents attended the graduation ceremony but left before I gave my speech. "We have the Art Institute Gala. Darling," my father said, checking his diamond-studded watch. "We're on the host committee." "You understand. We've already heard your speech at home." College was when the lesson in building character truly began. Despite our family's immense wealth, my parents insisted I take out student loans to cover my living expenses. "You need to understand the value of $1. Clara," my father lectured, leaning back in his leather chair. "There's no better way than having a little debt. It builds character." So, I worked. I worked 30 hours a week at the campus library. The smell of old paper, floor wax, and instant coffee becoming my entire world. I lived in a tiny, drafty apartment in Hyde Park and learned to budget every single penny. I remember the sheer, cold panic when my laptop died during finals week of my junior year. I spent 3 agonizing months saving up for a refurbished one, writing papers by hand in the library's computer lab. My grades suffering. I never asked them for money. I knew the answer would be a lecture, not help. Meanwhile, Amelia attended NYU to study art history. My parents paid for everything, not just tuition, but a sprawling luxury apartment in Soho that I saw once. It was all white and glass. They funded a limitless credit card for essentials which, from her social media, included weekly shopping sprees, dinners at restaurants I'd only read about, and spring breaks in Europe. Her monthly allowance was more than my yearly salary at the library. I remember a family dinner where Amelia complained over the phone that her high-end Apple laptop felt sluggish. My father laughed, called his assistant, and had the newest, a most expensive model messengered to her apartment the same day. "Your sister is in a creative field, Clara," my mother explained to me, sensing my silence. "She needs the best tools for her design work. It's an investment." By the time I graduated with high honors in finance, I had stopped trying to earn their approval. I had stopped expecting them to see me at all. I accepted I would never be the daughter they wanted. So, I focused on being the woman I wanted to be. I took a demanding job at a financial consulting firm in the Loop. I worked hard. I saved. And I rented my own quiet, comfortable apartment. It wasn't luxurious, but it was mine. Every piece of furniture, every plate, every book on my shelf was bought with my own hard-earned money. For the first time in my life, I felt a deep, steady sense of pride. My independence seemed to be a relief for my parents. Our interactions dwindled to obligatory holiday dinners. At these events, I sat silently, a ghost at the table, listening to everyone praise Amelia's latest social triumph or her new, sophisticated boyfriend. "Clara is doing well," my mother would say if a relative asked, her voice tinged with something I used to think was kindness, but now recognized as pity. "She has a very steady, responsible job." The subtext was always clear, boring, disappointing, unambitious. I had stopped caring. My worth wasn't tied to their approval anymore. And then, on a cold, rainy Tuesday in November, my life changed. I was driving home late from a client meeting. The rain was turning to ice, and my car sputtered, choked, and died on a dark, empty stretch of road miles outside the city. My panic was immediate and cold. My phone battery was at 5%. I cursed myself for not charging it, my hands shaking. I called the first 24-hour roadside assistance number I could find. The dispatcher, his voice bored, promised a tow truck would be there within an hour. 58 minutes later, just as my phone battery died, the blinding white headlights of a heavy-duty tow truck appeared in my rearview mirror. A man stepped out into the rain. He was tall, wearing a heavy work coat with Wilson's Garage embroidered on the chest. He walked to my window, and I was struck by his eyes. They were brown and, in the harsh glare of the headlights, surprisingly kind. "Ma'am, you called for a tow." His voice was deep and steady, a calm anchor in my panic. "I'm Leo." "Yes, I stammered, my teeth chattering. It just stopped. "I don't know what happened." "Mind if I take a look under the hood before I hook it up?" he asked. "No sense towing it if it's something simple." It's freezing out here. I popped the hood, and he worked quickly, his large, grease-stained hands moving with an expert confidence I found mesmerizing. He didn't seem to mind the sleet. As he worked, his flashlight beam landed on a book on my passenger seat. A biography of Marcus Aurelius. Stoicism. Huh? He asked, his voice slightly muffled as he leaned into the engine block. A heavy read for a rainy night. I was stunned into silence for a moment. You've read it a few times, he said. He reconnected a wire, and the engine light on my dashboard suddenly clicked off. Your sensor wire was loose. Common issue in this model when it's damp. You should be good to go. He fixed it. Just like that. He didn't try to overcharge me. I didn't insist on a tow I didn't need. He just closed the hood and wiped his hands on a rag. We started talking, standing there in the light drizzle. The world quiet, except for the hum of his truck's engine. He wasn't just a mechanic. He was articulate, thoughtful, and had a dry sense of humor that made me smile despite being cold. He talked about Roman history, not just as facts, but as ideas. It's one thing to read about enduring hardship, he said, but it's another to stand in the rain and fix a car. Right? He asked me about my job in finance. Instead of his eyes glazing over, he asked intelligent questions. So you're managing risk, he mused. But isn't all finance just a sophisticated bet on human behavior? Seems riskier than an engine. By the time I drove away, my car running perfectly, me heater blasting, I felt a warmth that had nothing to do with the car. I felt a connection I hadn't felt in years. He handed me his card. Call the shop if it gives you trouble again, he said, smiling a little. Or, if you ever want to debate the finer points of meditations. Our first official date was coffee the following Saturday. It was supposed to be a quick thank you. It lasted 4 hours. The conversation flowed effortlessly, like breathing after being underwater for a long time. Leo was unlike any man I had ever met. He was completely Bratian, refreshingly authentic. He was present. He listened when I spoke. His eyes focused on mine. He wasn't checking his phone, or scanning the room, or trying to impress me with a resume. We went on sample dates. We took long walks along Lake Michigan, visited the Museum of Science and Industry, cooked dinner at my apartment. He loved to cook. I learned that he read constantly, on every subject, and that he volunteered at a community center teaching teens basic car repair so they don't get ripped off. He had taken over his father's garage a few years ago when his dad got sick. I found myself falling deeply in love with Leo Wilson, the mechanic. After 6 months, I decided to bring him to one of my family's obligatory Sunday dinners. I was nervous, my stomach in knots, but I was also hopeful. I thought that maybe, just maybe, they would see the incredible man I saw. I was wrong. The moment I introduced him, the atmosphere in the room froze. My father, Marcus, stood up and shook Leo's hand, but his smile was a tight, polite mask. It didn't reach his eyes. He looked pointedly at Leo's calloused hands, then at his simple, clean-shaven face. Leo Wilson, my father said, his voice smooth. Clara tells us you're a mechanic. Must be satisfying, working with your hands. The words were polite. The tone was one you'd use on a household servant. My mother, Eleanor, was worse. She barely glanced at Leo. How? Interesting, she said, her voice dripping with forced sweetness. Her eyes immediately scanned the room and lit up. Amelia, darling, you're here. And this must be Julian. My sister, Amelia, swept in with her new boyfriend. Julian, a slick, polished art dealer in a $3,000 suit, whose family owned half a dozen galleries. For the rest of the night, my parents fawned over Julian. They hung on his every word. They talked about art auctions, their recent trip to Paris, and the importance of good connections and the right background. They directed minimal, patronizing questions at Leo. So, do you enjoy working on cars? Leo, my mother asked at one point, as if she were talking to a child about his hobby. My father cut Leo off mid-sentence while he was politely answering a question, turning to ask Julian his opinion on a new artist. I sat there, my face burning with a familiar childhood humiliation. It was a hot, prickling shame that crawled up my neck. Leo, however, remained perfectly calm. He was polite. He answered their condescending questions thoughtfully, and he never once tried to be someone he wasn't. He just watched them, his expression unreadable, a quiet intelligence in his eyes. In the car on the way home, I couldn't stop apologizing. The words just spilled out of me. I'm so sorry. Leo, they were awful. They were so rude. So horrible. Leo reached over and took my hand. His grip was firm and warm, a solid, grounding presence. Clara, he said, his voice gentle but firm. You never have to apologize for them. Their behavior has nothing to do with you, and it has nothing to do with me. The next morning, my mother called. I saw her name on the screen and my stomach immediately tightened. I let it ring 3 times before answering. Hi, Mom. Her voice was honeyed, a thick, sweet syrup of false concern that she used when she was about to be cruel. Clara, darling, she began. You know your father and I only want you to be happy. We were just so surprised last night. I waited, my hand gripping the phone. I knew what was coming. I had been hearing variations of this my entire life. But a mechanic. Clara. Really? She said, her voice dropping into a conspiratorial whisper, as if we were discussing a terrible secret. It's not about us. Of course. We're not snobs. But what will people say? What kind of future can he possibly provide for you? You're a Harrison. People expect, well, they expect more. You have a reputation to uphold. Mom, Leo is intelligent. He's kind. And he makes me happy. I said, my voice firmer than I felt. My throat was tight. He owns his own business. That should be all that matters. She sighed, a dramatic, weary sound I knew well. It was the sound of my profound, unending disappointment. You've always been so stubborn. Clara, just like your grandfather. Bless his heart. Please, just think about what you're doing. Think about your family. You could do so much better for yourself. There are so many suitable men. My father's call came later that week, while I was at my desk, right in the middle of a complex analysis. He didn't bother with pretenses or honeyed words. Clara, I'm going to be direct, he said. His voice, the one he used in boardrooms, cold, flat, and final. This phase you're in, it ends now. I won't have my daughter associated with a common laborer. It's embarrassing. It reflects poorly on me. On this family, we have associates at the firm with sons who are far more suitable. I expect you to make the sensible choice and end this foolishness. It's not a phase. Dad, I love him, I said quietly, my face burning. I could feel my colleagues in the cubicles nearby. Love, he scoffed, the word sounding dirty in his mouth. Love doesn't pay for a mortgage on the Gold Coast. Clara, love doesn't secure your place in society. Grow up. He hung up. I sat there for a long time, my hands shaking so badly I couldn't use my mouse. I felt sick. That night, I told Leo, my voice small, expecting him to be angry. Or worse, to leave. He simply listened, his jaw tight, his eyes hardening. But when I finished, he just pulled me into his arms. His embrace was so solid, so safe. Don't let them dim your light. Clara, he whispered into my hair, don't you ever let them make you feel small. Their problem is with their own empty lives, not with you. A few weeks later, Leo said he had a surprise for me. He was nervous. an energy I hadn't seen in him before. "I want to show you my shop," he said, fiddling with his keys. I was confused. "I've been to the garage." "Leo, I love the garage." "No." He smiled. A real, nervous smile. "Not the garage. The shop." He drove us out of the city, to a nondescript industrial park I'd never seen before. I expected a small, dirty garage, maybe a bit bigger than the one he used for daily repairs. Perhaps where he did his restorations. He pulled up to a massive, modern-looking warehouse. It was sleek, dark gray, with no signage, only a number. He used a key card to open a heavy steel side door. I stepped inside, and my jaw dropped. My heels clicked on a polished gray concrete floor so clean you could eat off it. It wasn't a garage. It was a high-tech laboratory. The cavernous space was filled with the low hum of servers, advanced machinery I didn't recognize gleaming CNC machines, diagnostic bays with glowing monitors lined one wall, several classic cars, in various states of restoration, were on lifts. But one bay was different. It held a bare engine block connected by a web of wires to a bank of computers. "Leo." "What is this?" I whispered. My words seemed to echo in the vast, clean space. "This," he said, his voice full of a pride I'd never heard before, "is what I do when I'm not fixing transmissions." He led me to a small, clean glass-walled office in the corner. His desk was covered in technical journals and complex blueprints. He picked up a framed photo of a younger Leo in a cap and gown, standing next to his smiling parents. "I haven't been completely honest with you, Clara," he said, his voice serious. It looked vulnerable. "I didn't start out as a mechanic. I have a master's degree in mechanical engineering from Northwestern." I stared at him, my mind racing, trying to connect this man, this place, with the man who had patiently listened to my parents' insults. "You're an engineer, but why are you running a garage? Why?" He smiled, a little sadly. "Burnout. And purpose. I worked for 8 years at a top automotive R&D firm in Detroit. I designed high-performance engines for luxury sports cars. I was good at it. Very good. But I was working 90-hour weeks, sleeping under my desk, designing components for cars that cost more than a house. It was a soulless, empty life." He sat on the edge of the desk, turning the photo frame in his hands. "Then, 4 years ago, my dad got sick. Really sick. He had a heart attack. I took a leave of absence to come home and run his community garage, the one he built from nothing, just to keep it from going under. And something clicked. Clara. I was working with my hands. Yes, but I was solving problems. Real problems for real people. People who needed their car to get to work, not to show off at a country club. I loved it. I loved the honesty of it." He looked at me, his eyes intense. "After my dad recovered, I couldn't go back. I quit my job. I took over the garage. But I never stopped being an engineer." He led me back to the engine on the stand. "For the last 3 years," he said, his voice alive with a sudden, vibrating passion, "I've been developing this." He pointed to a series of compact, silver components attached to the engine. "It's a hybrid conversion kit. It's a patented system that can be retrofitted onto any standard gasoline car, increasing its fuel efficiency by up to 80% without a loss in performance. I've been using the garage as a real-world testing lab, installing prototypes in my regular customers' cars to refine the design." He handed me a thick, bound folder. It was full of technical specifications, data readouts, and at the back, an official document from the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office. I looked up from the papers, my mind, the mind of a financial analyst, reeling. "Leo, this is... I run market projections every day. This isn't just a kit. This is revolutionary. This..." This could change the entire auto industry. This is worth. God. I can't even. Why? Why keep this a secret? Why didn't you tell me? He took my hands. His were still calloused. But I now understood the mind and the precision that guided them. Because you fell in love with Leo, the mechanic, he said softly, his voice thick. You didn't fall in love with Leo, the Northwestern engineer, or Leo, the potential tech entrepreneur. You saw me, Clara, when I met you, and especially after I met your family. I saw how they valued status and a last name. I've met people like them my whole life. People who look at my hands and see a laborer, not a mind. I had to know you were different. And you are. Tears welled in my eyes. He saw me, just as I saw him. It valued my heart, not my family's name. As for your parents, he continued, a hard, protective edge in his voice. I wanted them to accept me for who I am. Not for my credentials. Not for my bank account. If they couldn't do that, they didn't deserve to know. 2 weeks later, Leo took me for a walk along the lakefront. It was a cold, clear night. The same spot where we'd had one of our first long talks. The Chicago skyline glittered like a carpet of diamonds against the black water. The wind was sharp, but I felt nothing but warmth. He stopped and turned to me. Clara, he said, his voice thick with emotion, his hands holding mine. You're the most real, the most genuine person I've ever met. In a world of fakes, you are true. You see people for who they are, not what they have. You love without conditions. You're the partner I've always hoped for, the one I want to build a whole life with. He knelt on one knee, the concrete cold, pulling a small, velvet box from his coat pocket. I want to spend my life building things with you. Clara Harrison, will you marry me? The ring was beautiful. A simple, elegant sapphire, my birthstone flanked by 2 small diamonds. But I barely saw it. I saw only his face, his kind, steady eyes. Yes, I cried, pulling him to his feet. Yes, Leo. Yes, 1,000 times. Yes. That night, floating on a cloud of pure joy, I called my parents. I was so happy, so full of love. I thought naively that maybe this time would be different. My mother answered, Clara, what is it? It's late. Mom, I have wonderful news, I said, beaming, my voice bubbling over. Leo proposed, and I said yes. We're getting married. The silence on the other end of the line was so long, so complete, so cold. I thought the call had dropped. Mom, are you there? Yes. I'm here, she finally said. Her voice was flat, frozen, devoid of all emotion. That's quite a surprise. Have you really? I really thought this through. Clara, after all, we said, no congratulations. No excitement, just a cold, heavy wave of disappointment that snuffed out my joy. Yes, Mom, I love him. I'm marrying him. Well, she said, letting out a sharp, impatient sigh. I suppose you'll do what you want. You always were stubborn. Just don't expect us to be happy about it. Before I could even respond, her voice suddenly changed, becoming bright, animated, and gushing. It was a transformation that gave me emotional whiplash. Oh, that reminds me. Did Amelia call you? Julian proposed to her last weekend in Paris. He gave her a 5-carat diamond. Clara, can you imagine? It's stunning. We're planning a massive wedding at the Drake Hotel next June. Isn't that just wonderful? Your father is so thrilled. I stood there in my apartment, the beautiful ring on my finger suddenly feeling heavy. My engagement was a problem to be managed. My sister's was a triumph to be celebrated. That's great. Mom, I said, my voice hollow. I'm happy for them. You must be. She gushed, completely missing my tone. We're throwing them an engagement party at the country club next month. 300 guests. It's going to be the event of the season. You and Leo. I will have to come. Of course. The next few months were a painful ennui. Public display of that double standard. My parents threw an extravagant Rosen, glittering party for Amelia and Julian. The invitation was on cardstock so thick it felt like a small board, embossed in gold. The party was exactly what you'd expect. Champagne fountains, a string orchestra, photographers from the society pages. Leo and I attended, and we were treated like wallpaper. My mother, floating by in a new gown, introduced Leo to her friends as Clara's friend, his profession left unsaid, as if it were a dirty, embarrassing secret. My father clapped Julian on the back, calling him son, while he looked right through Leo. All family gatherings, all phone calls, all focus, became about Amelia's wedding. Sunday dinners were transformed into high-stress wedding planning sessions. I sat silently with Leo, holding his hand under the table, as my mother and Amelia debated flower arrangements that cost more than my car, and tasted cakes from bakeries that had 6-month waiting lists. When I tried to mention my own plans, a small, simple ceremony in a garden, a reception at our favorite restaurant, my mother would just nod distractedly, not even looking up from a fabric swatch. "That's nice, dear," she'd say, her voice dismissive. "Now, Amelia, about the bridesmaid dresses. Should they be silk or satin?" The photographer said silk shines too much. I felt invisible. It was the same hollow, aching feeling I'd had my entire childhood. But now it was sharper, more painful. They weren't just dismissing me. They were dismissing Leo, the best and most honorable man I had ever known. The most painful moment came a month before Amelia's wedding. My father had called one of our rare Sunday dinners. Leo and I sat at the far end of the massive mahogany table, feeling like afterthoughts. My father, Marcus, stood at the head of the table and raised his crystal glass of wine. "A toast," he announced, beaming at Amelia, who was seated at his right hand. "To my beautiful daughter Amelia, and to Julian. Your mother and I have been going over the wedding budget." Amelia squealed with delight. Julian, her slick fiancé, just smiled, looking proprietary. "And we have decided that nothing is too good for our girl." Marcus continued. "So, we are setting aside $500. 000 for the celebration." The room was silent for a moment, absorbing the sheer, vulgar weight of that number. Amelia burst into happy tears and hugged our father. My mother dabbed her eyes, looking thrilled. I sat frozen. My hand was clenched in my lap, my nails digging into my palm. Leo quietly placed his hand over mine. I looked at my plate, at the intricate gold leaf pattern. $500,000. Our entire wedding. The garden. The restaurant. The dress. Everything was budgeted at just under $7,000, which we were paying for ourselves. My mother, in the midst of the celebration, caught my eye. She must have seen the look on my face. She gave me a tight, pitying smile. Later, as I was helping clear plates, a task Amelia was never expected to do, my mother cornered me in the kitchen. "Clara, don't look like that," she said, her voice a low reprimand. "It's not becoming." He offered nothing. "Mom, not a single dollar." "Well, of course not, darling," she said, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. Amelia's wedding is a major social event. It's an investment in our family's position. Your gathering is a different matter. A small, economical party is perfectly appropriate for your circumstances. Your circumstances. The words hung in the air. A final, cold dismissal of my life, my choices, and the man I loved. Amelia's wedding was exactly what my father had paid for a spectacle of excess. It was held at the Drake, the ballroom dripping with so many white orchids and crystals it looked like a distorted fairy tale. 500 guests, all of Chicago's elite. were in attendance. I stood by my sister's side in a hideous, lavender-colored dress my mother had picked. Feeling like a prop, Leo was there, in a beautifully tailored suit he had bought for the occasion. He looked more handsome and dignified than any man in that room. But my parents and their friends looked right through him. Several of my aunts and uncles pointedly asked me if I was still working at that little firm and gave Leo a brief, dismissive nod before turning away. The worst part was the toast. My father, overflowing with champagne and pride, took the microphone. "Tonight," he said, his voice booming, "my beautiful daughter Amelia marries the man of her dreams." He beamed at Julian, a man with ambition, education, and the right connections to succeed. A man from a good family, with the right background. He raised his glass. "Julian, you are exactly the kind of son-in-law we always hoped for. Welcome to the Harrison family." As he spoke, his eyes briefly, dismissively, flicked to the end of the head table, where Leo and I were seated. The message was not subtle. It was a public announcement. Julian was a son. Leo was nothing. I felt Leo's hand find mine under the table. He gave it a firm squeeze. "I'm okay," he whispered. "Are you?" I nodded. But I was biting the inside of my cheek. So hard I tasted blood. I would not cry at my sister's wedding. I would not give them the satisfaction. 2 weeks before my own wedding, I called my parents. I had to. One last time. To formally invite them. My own simple, paper invitations had been mailed. But I had received no RSVP. My father answered, his voice distracted. "Clara, I'm just heading into a meeting. Can this wait? It'll just take a minute." "Dad," I said, my voice sounding small. "I just wanted to formally invite you and Mom to our wedding. It's in 2 weeks. Saturday the 14th, at the Lincoln Park Garden. The ceremony starts at 4:00. His sigh was heavy, audible over the phone. "Clara, August 14th. That's impossible. We have the museum's annual gala that evening. We're the main sponsors. It's been on our calendar for a year. We can't miss it." My heart sank. "The ceremony is at 4:00. "Dad," I said, "Adespérate," fighting hope in my voice. "The gala doesn't start until 8:00. You could come for an hour. You could see me get married." There was another sigh. This one impatient. "I'll talk to your mother. We'll see what we can do. I have to go." He never got back to me. My wedding day dawned clear and beautiful. A perfect, warm August afternoon. The small garden was transformed. My friends and I had spent the night before stringing white fairy lights, and we'd put simple jars of wildflowers on the small cluster of chairs. It wasn't extravagant, but it was us. My best friend, Sarah, was helping me into my dress. A simple, elegant ivory gown I'd bought at a small boutique. "You look beautiful, Clara," she said, her eyes tearing up. I tried to smile. "Thanks, Sarah," but my eyes kept straying to the 2 empty chairs in the front row. A small, painful void in the otherwise happy scene. As the clock ticked closer to 4:00, my hands began to shake. He said he'd talk to my mother. He said, "We'll see. Maybe. Maybe they would surprise me." At 3:45, I couldn't stand it anymore. My stomach was a cold, hard knot. I grabbed my phone. "Clara, what are you doing?" Sarah asked. I have to," I whispered. I called my mother's cell. It rang once, twice, 3 times. I was about to hang up when she answered. "Clara, what is it? We're just getting ready to leave for our pre-gala cocktails." Her voice was light. "Breze." My voice came out as a whisper. "Mom, the ceremony starts in 15 minutes. Are you and Dad coming?" There was a pause. A dead, cold silence that lasted 5 full seconds. Then my mother's voice, stripped of all its social grace, returned. It was cold, and sharp, and final. Clara, we have been through this. We have obligations. Your father and I will not be attending. But it's my wedding day, I whispered. I could feel the tears, hot and sharp, welling up, blurring the image of my white dress. And it was your choice to marry him. She snapped, her voice dripping with a disdain that cut me to the bone. Enjoy marrying your mechanic. We will not be publicly embarrassed with you. The line clicked. She had hung up. I stared at the phone. My hand was shaking so violently I dropped it. It clattered to the floor. We will not be embarrassed with you. Not just disappointed. Not just angry. Embarrassed. As if my love, my life, my happiness, was a source of public shame. The tears came then. A hot, silent flood. He sank into a chair, my whole body trembling. Oh, Clara. Sarah rushed to my side, her arms around me. They're not coming. I sobbed, the words ripping out of my chest. They're not coming. They're too embarrassed. Then they don't deserve to be here, Sarah said fiercely, wiping my tears. They don't deserve you. There was a gentle knock on the door. Clara, honey, is everything okay? It was Leo's voice, full of concern. Come in. I choked out. He opened the door, looking impossibly handsome in his navy blue suit. His face was full of joy, but it crumpled the instant he saw my face. He was at my side in a second, kneeling on the floor, his hands taking mine. What happened? What's wrong? Through my sobs. I told him. I repeated my mother's words. Enjoy marrying your mechanic. We won't be embarrassed with you. I watched his face, his kind, gentle face, move through a storm of emotions, concern, then a flash of pure, cold anger, and finally, a deep, steady resolve. He took my face in his hands, his calloused thumbs gently wiping my tears. Clara Harrison. Look at me, he said, his voice low and firm. Today is their loss. It is the biggest, stupidest loss of their lives. They are missing the chance to see their brilliant, beautiful, strong daughter marry a man who loves her more than anything in this world. They will regret this. But we will not. This day is not about them. It is about us. Do you understand me? This is our day. I looked into his eyes, his steady, honest eyes, and my sobs quieted. He was right. I love you so much. I whispered. I love you more. He smiled. Now, let's go get married. As I fixed my makeup, there was another knock. An older man, his face kind and lined with a familiar sadness, stood there. It was my Uncle Arthur, my father's younger brother, the black sheep of the family who had become a history professor instead of a CEO. Uncle Arthur, I said, shocked. I wouldn't miss this for the world. Quito, he said, his voice thick. He held a small box. Your father. He called me this morning. I braced myself. What did he say? He told me he wasn't coming. Arthur said, his eyes full of a deep anger I'd never seen him show. He said you were being stubborn and that he wouldn't enable this. And then he had the nerve to ask me to check on you and make sure the fellow is at least sober. My stomach clenched. I told him. My uncle continued, his voice rising, that he was a fool, and the biggest coward I'd ever known. And then I hung up. I took a deep breath. Your grandmother, my mother, gave me this. She said to give it to my future bride, but I think she'd want you to have it. He opened the box. Inside was a beautiful, antique, sapphire brooch. And, he said, offering me his arm, I would be the proudest man in the world if you'd let me walk you down the aisle. Fresh tears filled my eyes. But this time, they were of gratitude. I'd love that. Uncle Arthur. The ceremony was perfect. As I walked down the aisle on my uncle's arm and saw Leo's face, all the hurt and anger from my parents simply evaporated. I felt light. I felt free. We said our vows. Vows we had written ourselves. surrounded by 20 people who genuinely loved us. At the small, joyful reception at our favorite Italian restaurant, I was laughing, truly laughing, as Leo's parents welcomed me into their family with warm, tearful hugs. Later in the evening, I saw Leo talking animatedly with a group of 3 well-dressed men who had been sitting at a table with my uncle. They were laughing, shaking Leo's hand, and one of them was clapping him on the back. "Who are your friends?" I asked. Walking over, Leo smiled and pulled me close. "Clara, I'd like you to meet Mr. Pobligan, Jensen, Mr. Cole, and Mr. Abe. They're colleagues from Detroit." Mr. Jensen, a man with sharp blue eyes, smiled warmly at me. "Congratulations, young lady. You've landed yourself a genius. We've been trying to hire this man back for 2 years. Now it looks like we'll just have to invest in his company instead." My friend Sarah, who was a budding photographer, snapped a picture at that exact moment, the 3 auto executives, beaming, shaking a laughing Leo's hand, my proud uncle raising a glass in the background. A sudden, cold, clear idea came to me. I pulled out my phone. I went to my text messages. I found the thread with my parents. I attached the photo Sarah had just shown me, and I wrote a simple message. "Thought you'd like to see a picture from the wedding you missed." I hit send. Then, for the first time in my life, I turned my phone off, silencing their inevitable, panicked calls. I put it in my purse, took my husband's hand, and went to dance. Our honeymoon was simple and perfect. We didn't fly to Europe or sit on a beach in the tropics. Leo had rented a small, quiet cabin on a lake in Wisconsin. We spent 3 days disconnected from the world. We hiked in the pine forests, read books by the fireplace, and cooked meals together. We talked for hours, planning the future of our family and his company. It was the most peaceful I had ever felt in my life. On our last day, as we were packing, Leo's phone rang. He had only turned it on to check the navigation for the drive home. He looked at the caller ID. "It's Mr. Ndida Jensen," he said, his voice suddenly tense. He answered the call, his back to me, as he looked out the window at the lake. He was quiet for a long time, just listening, his shoulders straightening. Yes, I see. That's incredible." He turned to me, his face pale, his eyes wide with a combination of shock and pure, unadulterated joy. "Leo, what is it? It's official," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "They held an emergency board meeting this morning. They're not just investing. They're fast-tracking the tech. Vertex Automotive is in for $10 million. We're going to full production by the end of the year." I screamed, throwing my arms around him. "Leo, that's amazing. It's everything. It's our everything. Clara," he said, hugging me so tightly I couldn't breathe. "I couldn't have done this without you." That same afternoon, as we drove back to Chicago, the first online edition of the Chicago Tribune's business section was published. My Uncle Arthur, who had been bursting with the secret, had given an exclusive interview to a reporter he trusted. The headline was "Explosive Local Mechanic Revealed as Engineering Genius. Secures $10 meters deal with Detroit Giant." The article detailed everything Leo's Northwestern engineering degree, his years at the top R&D firm, his decision to leave the corporate world to take over his father's garage, and the revolutionary hybrid technology he'd developed in secret. It quoted Mr. Jensen, who called Leo one of the most innovative minds in automotive engineering today. It painted a picture of a humble genius who valued real work over status. When we were an hour outside the city, I finally turned my own phone on. It exploded. A wave of notifications, texts, and voicemails flooded the screen so fast it froze the phone for a full minute. My heart hammered against my ribs. 32 missed calls. 27 from my mother. 5 from my father. And the texts. They were a timeline of their dawning panic. Mom 4:15 p.m. Clara. Call me. I saw a very strange article. Mom 4:30 p.m. Why didn't you tell us about Leo's company? Dad 4:45 p.m. Clara. Call me at the office immediately. This is not a request. Mom 5:00 p.m. We need to talk. We've had a terrible misunderstanding. Mom 5:30 p.m. Please call as soon as you get this. We want to take you and Leo to dinner. Tonight. Anywhere you want. The signature room. Our treat. Dad 6:00 p.m. Answer your phone. Clara. We need to discuss this. This Lakeshore business. I stared at the last message. Lakeshore business. How did he? I showed the phone to Leo. He read the messages. His expression unreadable. The signature room, he said, raising an eyebrow. They're rolling out the red carpet. They're panicking. I said, a cold, hard knot in my stomach. Leo. What's that? Lakeshore business. My father mentioned Leo was quiet for a moment. My new board. They move fast. They're looking for a location for our new R&D headquarters and first factory. The Lakeshore Development Project was one of the sites they were scouting. Your father's company has been trying to win that development bid for a year. It's a massive new media and tech hub. I looked at him, the pieces clicking into place. He's not just panicking as a father. He's panicking as a businessman. Looks that way, Leo said grimly. I typed a short reply to my mother. We're driving home. We are free tonight, but we're tired. You can come to our apartment at 8:00 if it's that important. Her reply was immediate. We'll be there. We agreed we would face them on our home field. At precisely 8:00 p.m., my apartment buzzer rang. I opened the door. My parents stood in the hallway, looking small and out of place. My mother was clutching a large, ridiculously expensive-looking gift bag from Neiman Marcus. My father held a bottle of champagne, a brand I knew cost over $500. They were immaculate, as always, but there was a strained, nervous energy in their smiles. Clara, darling, my mother said, rushing forward to embrace me. I didn't hug her back. I just stood there, stiff as a board. She pulled away, her smile faltering. Mom, Dad, please come in, I said, my voice polite and distant. Leo stood beside me, his arms crossed. A silent, solid presence. They entered our apartment, their eyes darting around, taking in our simple, comfortable furniture, our overflowing bookshelves. Or life. It was so different from their cold, curated mansion, a belated wedding present. My mother trilled, thrusting the gift bag at me. We just feel terrible about missing the ceremony. It was all a dreadful mistake. I set the bag on the floor by the door. Unopened. Please. Sight down. They perched nervously on the edge of our sofa. My father cleared his throat. Leo, he began, trying to sound magnanimous. We owe you an apology. It seems we made some assumptions about you, about your background, that were clearly incorrect. Leo just nodded, his expression neutral. He said nothing. If we had known, my mother jumped in, her voice bright and false. If we had just known about your Northwestern degree, and your company. Well, obviously. Obviously what? Mom, I interrupted, my voice quiet, but cutting through the tension. She faltered. Well, we would have treated him with basic human respect, I asked. Attended our wedding, not called him a mechanic, as if it were an insult, not told me you were embarrassed by me. My mother flinched. Clara, we made a mistake, she said, her voice strained. We're here to make amends. Are you? I asked, taking a step forward. Because it doesn't sound like you're sorry for how you treated him. It sounds like you're just sorry you misjudged his economic potential. Those are two very different things. My father straightened his tie. falling back on his boardroom demeanor. Clara, this is unproductive, regardless of the misunderstandings. We'd like to move forward. Positively, he turned his full attention to Leo, man to man. In fact, I've been thinking Harrison Media's entire distribution fleet is due for an upgrade. It would be a perfect opportunity to be the first to use your technology. A flagship partner. We could announce a partnership, a family venture. There it was. The real reason. Not love. Not family. A business deal. Leo, who had been silent, finally spoke. His voice was calm and mild. That's an interesting proposal. Marcus. My father beamed, sensing a victory. But, Leo continued, I should mention that my new board just finalized our expansion plans this afternoon. We've acquired the development rights for the entire Lakeshore District project. My father's face went white. The blood drained from it so fast I thought he might be sick. The Lakeshore project, he stammered. But, our bid. We've been working on that for a year. I know, Leo said. Our investors saw a unique opportunity to build our new R&D hub and showcase our technology in a large-scale, eco-friendly community. The City Council approved our bid this morning. We're breaking ground next month. My mother looked confused, looking between my father's pale face and Leo's calm one. Well, she said, trying to smooth things over. That's even more reason for our families to work together. Isn't it? I had heard enough. No, I said. My voice was loud in the small room. That's not what this is. You're not here to make things right. You're here because you think he can benefit you. Because he's not just a mechanic anymore. He's a rich engineer. And now he's just beaten you at your own game. Clara. That's not true, my mother protested. But her eyes were filled with a new, calculating respect as she looked at Leo. It is true, I said, the words pouring out. Years of pain and humiliation finally finding a voice. You missed our wedding. You chose to miss it. Because you were embarrassed. You've made me feel less than my entire life. Less than Amelia. Because I wasn't social enough. Or charming enough. And when I finally found a man who loves me for who I am, you dismissed him because his hands were dirty. And now that you've seen the article, now that you know he has money and status and power, now you want to be a family, Clara. Business and family are complicated. My father began. No, Dad, this isn't complicated. This is simple. I walked over and stood next to my husband, taking his hand. You and Mom value one thing: status. Money. Appearances. You value it more than character, more than kindness, and more than your own daughter. I finally believe you. My mother's eyes filled with tears. I couldn't tell if they were real, or just another performance. Clara, please, she whispered. We made a terrible mistake. We want to be in your lives. I looked at Jake, and he gave me a small, supportive nod. I think, I said, my voice shaking but strong, that we all need some time. We are building a life together, a life based on respect, and honesty, and unconditional love. If you want to be part of that life, I said, looking at both of them, you will have to prove that you understand what those words actually mean. This isn't a business negotiation. You can't fix this with an expensive gift or a strategic partnership. You have to earn back our trust. They stared at me, stunned into silence. This was not how they saw this going. They left shortly after, subdued and uncertain, the unopened gift bag and the expensive champagne still sitting by the door. 6 months later, my phone rang late one night. It was Amelia. Her voice was shaking, high-pitched with hysteria. Clara, I need your help. I don't know who else to call. My blood ran cold. Amelia, what's wrong? What happened? It's Julian. She sobbed. He's been arrested. The FBI. Clara, They're here. They're raiding our apartment. They said he's been running a massive fraud. Some kind of art forgery, an embezzlement ring. And they said he used Dad's company accounts to launder the money. Oh my God. Clara. What's happening? My mind raced. Julian. My father's perfect son-in-law. The man with the right connections. Amelia. Listen to me. Are you safe? Do you need a place to stay? There was a pause. Just a broken sob. You'd let me stay with you. After how awful I was. Get in a cab and come here. Now. I said. That's what family does. The scandal destroyed them. It was swift and brutal. Julian's crimes were tied directly to Harrison Media. And my father was implicated. Their reputation, the one they had sacrificed their daughter for, evaporated overnight. Their friends abandoned them. Facing legal ruin, they were forced to sell everything. The mansion, the art, the company. My parents, humbled and broken, came to our small house in Cambridge, a house we'd bought with our own money. They looked old, smaller than I had ever seen them. We've been doing a lot of thinking. My father began, his voice rough, about what really matters. The people we thought were our friends. My mother said quietly, her eyes red. They disappeared. But you, after how we treated you, you took in your sister when she had nowhere else to go. That's what family does. I repeated gently. We were wrong. My father said, finally looking me in the eye. About everything. About what makes a man. About what makes a life. About you. We don't expect forgiveness. My mother added, tears rolling down her cheeks. We just want a chance. A chance to be the parents you deserved all along. I looked at Leo, who stood beside me, his hand on my back. I took my mother's hand. The old normal wasn't very healthy, I said, but we can try to build something new. And we did. It was long, and it was hard. But slowly, they began to change. They learned to value connection over credentials. They began to genuinely love Leo, not for his company, but for his character. 2 years later, when Leo and I announced I was pregnant, their joy was real, unforced, and pure. A grandchild. My mother wept, holding my hands. We'll do it right this time. We'll be the grandparents we should have been as parents. Looking back, I realized that day, the day they refused to come to my wedding, was the worst day of my life. But it was also the day I finally got free. It forced me to stop seeking their approval and to define my own worth. My value was never about my family's name or my husband's bank account. It was about my own choices, my own integrity, and the life I built with a man who saw me for exactly who I was. Have you ever had to stand up for your choices against family pressure? How did you find the strength to choose your own path? Share your story in the comments below. And if this story touched your heart, please like, subscribe, and share it with others who might be struggling to find their own worth. Remember, you are worthy of love and respect, exactly as you are.